Hello everybody, Bobby Gaines back again to talk a little basketball. So, how about your 2013-2014 Boston Celtics, huh? Have they got you running back for more? Being facetious, of course, but some of you may remember that several months back I had a similar rant. What is the plan for the Celtics going forward? And well, I still don't know what it is. I mean, I say that half jokingly. People will try to deny it, and others will just kind of go with it entirely, that the Celtics are tanking and losing a lot of games, either by purpose or just kind of not being that good, in order to ascertain one of these top game-changing draft picks. But, I mean, at the same time, this isn't the only theory, and my thinking is, even if you get one of these top 5 or 6 players, what does that guarantee you? You'll still be a good team, I guess, but the goal wasn't to be a good team. The goal was to be a great team, a championship team. And looking at the Eastern Conference, and there are some mediocre teams in there, but looking at the Eastern Conference, you can be about 500, still make the playoffs, but that doesn't mean you're going to get past the second round. And for the Celtics, yeah, they missed the playoffs this year, but they still are only going to miss the playoffs by about 10 games, despite all their efforts to lose. And the only reason I say that they kind of went on a sudden skid downward is they started the season not great, but not as terrible as many thought. They played with some passion. They played with some spark. They even snuck out a win against the Miami Heat. And, I mean, granted, it's only the Atlantic Division, but they were in the lead for the Atlantic Division until about Christmas. And then something happened about January, and the Celtics won like 2 games and lost about 18. The same team that had played, slightly below 500 ball. Now, my theory is there were some discussions internally and said, the Celtics are playing at an above-average level, but what does this really do for our roster moving forward? It's perfectly legitimate to have questions about the future, but at the same token, if we are going to go with this whole formula, doesn't that mean the Celtics have to do a lot more than 1 year of losing? Does 1 year of losing guarantee any years of winning in the future? Maybe, maybe not. You look at Cleveland, you look at Charlotte, who is starting to look a little more legitimate, and you look at a few teams that have, pretty much sat on number 1 draft picks, and they're not necessarily a lot better off than they were. So, again, there's always some kind of suffering period for fans of any sports franchise. There's always a period of time where things are a little scarce, but for the Celtics, at least if they're going to take this approach going forward, I don't really see a way out of it. Because, alright, you get Andrew Wiggins, you get Jabari Parker, you get whoever you get. Are you still good enough, or do you just add like 10 wins to this team? So, if this is a 25-win team, do you have a 35-win team, 45-win team? Either way, you're still contending with Miami, Indiana, the Bulls, and maybe someone else who comes up and adds a big free agent. Celtics have not been good at getting free agents. They need to maybe try to go for that, too, in addition to just going for the draft. I keep hearing how many great draft picks they have because they traded KG and Pierce, and I keep hearing about, this year they've got a few picks, next year they've got a few picks. They got a pick for Doc Rivers from the Clippers, so, the Clippers aren't going to be bad. You're not going to get a great pick out of that. If it were that easy, I feel like the Celtics would have been building during the Big Three era instead of just letting it expire, and now here we are going, what now? I do think they have some good pieces in place. Obviously, Rajon Rondo, Jeff Green, Jared Sullinger. If you add a top draft pick to that, you improve it for certain. But then, again, why are we trying? I'm just being devil's advocate here. If the goal is to win a title, if the goal is to be in conversation for a title, and securing another above-average player makes you an above-average team, is that still good enough? Or should we demand more losing? Just something to think about. So Jabari Parker, hypothetically, if he comes to Boston now, they have a roster that will beat the lower, rung of the Eastern Conference, but can they beat Miami? Can they beat Indiana? Can they beat anyone in the West, which is what you really have to worry about with the Thunder, San Antonio, Houston, and teams of that ilk? Again, I don't know. Danny Ainge might have this great plan up his sleeve, and either way, we'll all be looking foolish on draft day when he pulls off some big trade or he gets the big player. I just feel like, and obviously I'm not stating anything super unobvious here, the Celtics are more than one good player away from being a championship contender, so whether they get that one player through the draft or through any other avenue, I think the philosophy should be the same. Play to win, play as hard as you can, and if you don't win, just keep going. That's what a good front office and a good coaching staff does. They recognize the weaknesses of the team and they go forward. They don't over-embellish, which is what I feel like we're doing this year. They don't just put whatever out there and try to lose. They make improvements. Even in losing seasons, they try to find ways to make improvements. So hopefully, even if next year's team is similar, hopefully, they take a different philosophy and just try their best to win. And maybe some of those young players develop even more, like Sullinger and Well, Jeff Green's probably about gone as far as he's going to go. But Kelly Olynyk, obviously, we'd like to see more out of him. And who knows who they get in the draft. I just don't think it should be the number one concern, especially with the Sixers and the Bucks driving hard for that number one spot. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on it. I'd love to know what you guys think. Boston Celtics, where do they go next year? Because obviously this year's shot. What do you think? Post some comments.